My name's Jessica Rivas, and I'm from Texas A&M, and I'm here with
Dr. Ronald Metoyer.
All right. So we're at the Tapia conference, and what is your role here at the Tapia conference?
So I'm the technical program co-chair, and so my job was to put together a committee of people to put together the technical program. So we have co-chairs for papers, co-chairs for panels, workshops, birds of a feather. What else did we have? The doctoral consortium and the robotics competition. And so we put a team together in over the last 18 months or so. Went through the process of putting out a call for papers, getting submissions, going through the review process, and making notifications and putting together the schedule of the program.
What has been your favorite part of the conference?
That's
or putting it together?
That's a good question. I mean, putting it together is just fun because I get to work with all these great people. So, you know, it's just an extension of networking. You get to work with all of your colleagues from around the country. My favorite part so far has probably been all the plenary sessions. I think they've been all great, and it's always fun and inspiring to hear from these people who are leaders in the field. I mean, even after you get your PhD and you know become a professor and you're working at a university, it's still inspiring to hear people like these folks who are out there doing their thing.
Mm-hmm. So as a professor, what is your research, or what are you currently doing?
So for I guess the first 7 years or so, I did a lot of research in computer graphics and animation. Currently, I'm steering in a slightly new direction. I just taught a new class last term on information visualization, and so I'm directing my research a little more towards HCI and InfoViz. So I want to use some of the visualization skills that I have and some of that background, but apply it more to interaction and information access.
Interesting. So through the years, what are some challenges that you faced?
Oh boy, that could take a while to answer. You know, the challenges I face are probably very similar to the ones that I face as a graduate student and as a student before that. Just having confidence in your work, knowing that that what you're doing is good stuff, and that you're going to get there, even though sometimes you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's something I think we all face being in school and going through if you ever go through a PhD program. So that's one of the challenges. That's probably the one that I've had to deal with the most, and just maintaining confidence in yourself and what you're doing. It's important, and sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that. And then you come to places like this and you get all that motivation, and doing something like this once a year, and seeing all of your colleagues and people who are going through the same types of things, it's always good for me.
So you would say one of the bases of your motivation would be things like this conference, and it certainly helps reinvigorate me in my research and my outlook on how to do outreach and stuff. When I go to conferences like this, my original motivation for computing was much different. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would that be?
Well, I got into. Neither one of my parents was into computing. Neither one of them went to college. Mm-hmm. And I got into computer science, I guess I was in the 5th grade, and I was at a Catholic school, and we didn't have any computing classes or any computers. And one of the fathers, one of our students, decided to teach a class on Saturday. And I don't know who got the machines, but they had some Apple machines, like Apple IIes. I don't know. You probably don't know what that is.
No.
Yeah. It was a big thing, but it was some of the first Apple machines, the Apple IIs, and they were in the closet of the rectory where the nuns lived, and I guess there was 2 of them. Yeah, 2 of them. And he teaches class on Saturday, and teaches some basic skills. We're doing basic programming. And then we'd get to write some programs during the week and talk about them the next week. And so that's what really got me into it. I got excited writing programs. We did some things we did some graphics programs. So that probably also fed into what my final what I specialized in, which was computer graphics and animation. Those are some of the projects that got me the most excited at that time. And these were, black and green. The screens were the writing was always green, and there were always line drawings. So it's very, very simplistic stuff. But that's what got me into it. And my parents bought me a machine. Shortly after that, they bought a Commodore 64, which I'm sure you've never heard of either. And that one turned out to be hard for me to program. So the Commodores were a different operating system, very different from the Apples. And so I had immediate failure with those, which, failure happens to all of us. And so I think at that time, they said, okay, well, we're going to bring this one back. And they went and bought me a machine that was like the ones that we were learning on in school, which was a big sacrifice for them because the Apples were very expensive compared to the Commodores. You could go to like the equivalent of the store at the time was called Gemco. I guess it'd be equivalent of like out here we have Fred Meyer, or like a Target. You could go there and buy a Commodore 64, but to get an Apple you had to go to the Apple store, and you knew you were going to pay a lot more money. But they did it, and they got it for me. They got me an Apple IIc, which was one of the first portable computers. It was about this big, and it was portable because it had a handle, but it was very, very heavy still, and it didn't have the screen wasn't portable, and so I was able to program on that because that's the same operating system I was learning on, and things just kind of snowballed from there. I was just excited about computing. I went to UCLA, got into their computer engineering program at the time, and that's how it all happened for me.
That's nice. So you'd say your parents play a big role. I know you mentioned your parents didn't even go to college, and that sparks up a curiosity in me, because both my parents did not attend college either. And so I'm curious, how do you, I know because being in the engineering world and computing, it's, hard to kind of explain to your parents, what it is that you're doing, especially when, they didn't go through the process. So how did you, how did you relate what you were doing to your parents? Like that, I guess that's would be my question, because how do you explain to your parents what it is that you're doing?
Yeah, that is a very good question. And so they didn't go to college. My mom, my mom and my dad are mostly my mom's very technical savvy. So even though she didn't go to college, she used computers, and as they became more common, desktops and stuff, she would begin to use them. So it wasn't too hard to explain to them. I'm learning how to write things, programs like the ones you're using on the machine. So I think they got that, and then I'd come home and I'd show them code, and of course it looked like another language, but they got the idea, and they knew more or less what I was getting into. But they were probably going into it very blind. I mean, they knew I was going to a good school, and it was in the engineering program, so not much could go wrong. If you got an engineering degree from UCLA, I was going to be marketable somewhere. And I also did have, besides that parent who taught that original class, Mr. McKinney, I'm sure that at the time they probably talked to him a bit and learned a little bit about what I'd be getting into. But I had some friends as well who were doing some computer science type stuff, doing some programming. So I think they were comfortable with what I was doing and didn't need to know a whole lot about the details. But that's one of the nice things about computing is you could say, I'm writing the stuff you're using, I'm learning how to build that. It's like if I were a mechanical engineer, I'd say I'm learning how to build that thing. So that's kind of how I explained it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you taking some time out from the Tapia conference.
No problem. You're welcome.